Alright, we're going to check out the His Story of Grandview here from the horse's mouth, the city of Grandview. In 1861, General James Lane led his Jayhawkers out of Kansas into the rolling hills of a future Grandview, taking over the farm of Solomon Young, Harry Truman's grandfather, an ardent Unionist. The troops deleted 400 hogs and forced his grandmother to cook them biscuits while they pewed her chickens. Those pesky rebels. Grandview began as a modest farming community called Anderson District, named in honor of John Anderson, the owner of the only general store in the area, also a friend of Young's. In the late 1800s, the farmers grew fed up with the day-long trip to the nearest post office. Inspired by the landscape from the steps of his general store, Anderson, Young, and friend Irvin Wallingford declared it a grand view, and in 1912 the city was born. There you go, guys. That's all it takes in 1912 to create a city by declaring it a grand view. Here's a little about Mr. Harry S. Truman, the 33rd President of the United States. Harry Truman grew up on his grandfather's beloved 600-acre farm in Grandview. He was there when Grandview became a city and got its own post office. In 1917, he left to fight in the theater. When he came back after the armistice, he started on the path to the White House. But he always recalled the pleasant times he had in Grandview. The Truman Farm home still stands in Grandview and is maintained by the National Park Service. Visitors come from across the country to see this place of history, as well as the small room where Harry Truman gazed out over the rolling hills of Grandview. And we're not getting any photos here. The city of Grandview should really consider working on their website. In 1912, Grandview became a railroad terminal for Kansas City Southern. The new transportation source brought an influx of people into the town, and by 1929, Grandview had grown into a city of 700 residents. The original depot is still in Grandview next to the Grandview City Hall and is adjacent to Freedom Park. I guess that's something that I neglected to notice while I was down there. Grandview Historical Society maintains the building, now known as the Depot Museum, filled with artifacts, displays, historical photographs, antiques, and an authentically furnished station agent's office. Then they go on to talk about incorporating a flying deletion machine facility, and so on. Before we look into Mr. Harry S. Truman here, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on this portrait of him that is said to be hanging in the Scottish Rite Temple. Looking like a top hatter, among other things. Here we are over on the Wacky, We're going to take a little look into Mr. Truman here. We're not going to read this entire thing. It's actually pretty extensive. Harry S. Truman, born 1884, expired 1972, was the 33rd President of the United States, serving from 1945 to 1953. As the 34th Vice President in 1945, he assumed the presidency upon the expiration of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Truman was raised in Independence, Missouri. And here we are, we already have some conflicting information going on. During the first theater, he was stationed in France as a captain. Returning home, he opened a haberdashery. A haberdasher is a business or person who sells small articles for sewing, dressmaking, and knitting, such as buttons, ribbons, and zippers. So after the time spent in France in theater, he was selling buttons, ribbons, and zippers, apparently, in Kansas City, Missouri. And then he was elected as judge of Jackson County in 1922. And in 1934, he was elected to the U.S. Senate. Between 1940 and 44, he gained national prominence as the chairman of the Truman Committee, which aimed to reduce waste and inefficiency in theater time contracts. Truman was elected vice president in the 1944 presidential election and became resident upon Roosevelt's expiration in 1945. Only then was he told about the ongoing Manhattan Project and the Big Boomer. Truman authorized the first and only use of big boomers in the theater against the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Sounding familiar, kind of like our first and only time visiting the moon. But I digress, and let's see. What else we got here? A little information about the family. He was born in Lamar, Missouri in 1884, the oldest child of John Anderson Truman and Martha Ellen Young Truman. He was named for his maternal uncle, Harrison Harry Young. And his father was an apparent farmer and livestock dealer. The family lived in Lamar until Harry was 10 months old, when they moved to a farm near Harrisonville, Missouri. Then next moved to Belton, Missouri, and in 1887 to his grandparents' 600-acre farm in Grandview. When Truman was 6, his parents moved to Independence, Missouri, so he could attend the Presbyterian Church Sunday school. So they cleared that up for us. Apparently being raised in several places in Missouri. Truman was employed briefly in the mailroom of the Kansas City Propaganda Star before making use of his business college experience to obtain a job as a timekeeper for construction crews on the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway. which required him to sleep in workmen's camps along the rail lines. Truman and his brother Vivian later worked as clerks at the National Bank of Commerce in Kansas City. In 1906, Truman returned to the Grandview farm, where he lived before entering the theater. Once again, we talked about that earlier. And then it goes on to talk about his theater experience. Here's a photo of the Truman home in Independence, Missouri. Looking like an old world beauty. And we're going to take a little walk around Independence at some point. It is also on the list. Here's a young Truman in his costume. And once again, interesting background. Here we are in our costumes in front of a decimated looking old world structure. And let's see, I saw something about, you can see how far we get into it here. Something about some construction to the White House. Here we go. In 1948, Truman ordered an addition to the exterior of the White House, a second-floor balcony in the south portico, which came known as the Truman Balcony. There you go. Thanks to Mr. Truman here, this is what the White House looks like. The addition was unpopular. Some said it spoiled the appearance of the south facade, but it gave the first family more living space. Meanwhile, structural deterioration and a near-imminent collapse of the White House led to a comprehensive dismantling and rebuilding of the building's interior from 1949 to 1952. Architectural and engineering investigations during 1948 deemed it unsafe for occupancy. Truman, his family, and entire resident staff were relocated across the street into the Blair House during the renovations. I didn't mean to click on that, just wanted to give you a quick view, but we're not going to get into that. There it is, now go away. As the newer West Wing, including the Oval Office, remained open, Truman walked to and from his work across the street each morning and afternoon. On November 1st, 1950, Puerto Rico nationalist attempted to delete Truman at the Blair House. On the street outside the residence, one of the men mortally incapacitated a White House policeman. Before he expired, the officer pewed and deleted one of the intended deleters of Mr. Harry S. Truman. Blah, blah, blah spiel. Sounds like, the same type of deal we've been getting our entire lives. Like, are these things real? Or are they intended to sway or divide the public in a certain fashion? I don't know. And then we go on to talk about steel and coal strikes, scandals, and controversies. Say it isn't so. We won't go into that. We got civil rights talk here. Yada yada. I think that's pretty much gonna do it. I'm gonna try to pull up some photos of the farmhouse. since we were unable to look at it because it is under refurbishment. Before we moved on to looking at a few images of the Truman farmhouse, I found a few interesting little photos of some White House reconstruction here that I thought you might like to look at. I mean, what do we got going on in here? Of course, you know, I can't move it around apparently. Oh, there we go, a little bit. Seeing several different things going on here, including, you know, what we would be told is stonework mixed in with brickwork. So, from what we just read, it is alleged that this balcony here is due to Mr. Harry S. Truman. Here's another interesting image. Look at the size of these beams here. It's incredible. And once again, we've got a mixture of brick and what looks like stone in here behind whatever this rendering is. Some kind of weird block work up here at the ceiling. These blocks look kind of familiar to me. I don't know if those are newer, if that's something that these guys did or what. Look at the size of this beam compared to these two gentlemen here. It's insane. Looks like we got some lines. I mean, look at the size of these beams. This ain't no 2x4s, that's for sure. You can see where the plaster and lath was once covering those lines. Construction of underground service and utility spaces by the northeast corner of the mansion. Look at these windows over here. I keep trying to drag the screen. I'm sorry, this is stupid. I gotta move it around with my arrows here. But what's going on? This is underground construction here, and we're almost above the grade of these windows. And some finished photos. Am I back to the first one? I think so. It's also interesting, the floor in here. What's going on with the floor inside this structure? We're just driving around in here. On the inside of the White House. I believe the narrative states that the White House was built in 1794. I'm gonna have to look. And they're saying it was built between 1792 and 1800 and was burned by the British in 1814. But anyways, just thought that those were interesting. Here we are on the National Park Service website. We're gonna see if they got a few photos of the farmhouse here. Due to the ongoing foundation construction, the park is suspending Truman farmhouse tours. The grounds are open every day, sunrise to sunset. Audio tours of the grounds are available on the MPS app. So I guess they're doing some foundation repairs. Surprise! Very common thing. I also read somewhere that this house, which wouldn't make sense as far as the foundation is concerned, but I read somewhere that it was moved from Grandview Road to Blue Ridge Road. So I'm not really sure about that. Here's a then and now. Not going to give us the full image of either, apparently. I went to this website as opposed to the goggle images because, you know, you can never get a full-sized freaking image on there anymore. So, trying to find one better here. Looks like we are unable to blow these up as well, so. And pretty much a bust here. Let's see what else we can find. Here we go. TripAdvisor to the rescue. Maybe. Oh, that's the Independence home. My apologies. And this looks like the back of the farmhouse. Look at this thing. Well, just kidding. I was hoping to get it bigger, but this is sitting on a pile of rubble down here, basically. Like, what are we doing here? Gosh, this thing looks like it's been added on to a few different times. It's got some piggyback stuff going on. I wonder if they could get a little further away. So I also read a little bit um, that little stone post we were looking at. Apparently, there are several of those around the property, and you can find those stone. Were they always stone posts everywhere, randomly throughout the city? Doesn't matter where you're at, Kansas City, the outskirts. But I think that's pretty much going to wrap this up as I keep getting the same images over and over again here. Not a very exciting structure to look at as it is, or as it were, anyhow. But I appreciate everybody's time and thank you for watching.